Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a couple of things to discuss, including a couple of signings, some PTO updates, a few news updates surrounding Arizona, Buffalo, and the Vancouver Canucks, plus a couple of trade rumors involving the Canucks again, the Senators, and the Winnipeg Jets. So I'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Instant Hockey Channel. Now, as usual, I'm going to kick things off today by discussing a couple of signings that have happened over the past couple of days. There have been some pretty big signings over the past couple of days. We'll start with the Anaheim Ducks, as they have signed 2022 second-round pick Tristan Luneau to a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $894,000, and the deal will begin at the start of this year. Now, for Luneau, he was a 2022 second-round pick, and a really good pick at that. When I was predicting my 2022 draft, I had him going in the first round. He wound up going in the middle of the second round, so he fell a little bit in my opinion. But he's still a really good defender. He's been playing over in the QMJHL over the past couple of years. Put up 20 goals and 83 points in 65 games last year and did a fantastic job. Luneau looks like he could eventually morph into like a really good top four defenseman. We know that the Ducks still have Drysdale, and they have guys like Zellweger and Mitnyakov who eventually will be solid top four defensemen. But Zellweger and Mitnyakov are left shot defensemen, whereas Luneau can be a right shot defenseman. So I think in time Luneau could definitely be the second right shot defenseman in the top four behind Drysdale. So that's a really good pickup from the Ducks, and I think signing him to his ELC is a fantastic job. So good to see Luneau signed with the Ducks. He probably won't get into any NHL action, probably go back to juniors this year, then probably need another year or two in the AHL, so he's probably 2 or 3 years away from competing for an NHL roster spot. But when he's ready for the NHL, I think he should definitely be a solid top four defenseman. I think that was a fantastic draft selection last year from the Anaheim Ducks. So really good job for him to finally get under contract for the Anaheim Ducks. Going over to the next contract that was signed over the past couple of days, and that is Morgan Frost. As the Philadelphia Flyers signed RFA Morgan Frost, one of the last remaining RFAs, to a 2-year deal with an AAV of $2.1 million. Now, Frost is a fantastic middle six center. Last year, that was probably his best season as of yet. Was able to get into a little more games, play a little bit more time with the Flyers. He was able to put up 19 goals and 46 points in 81 games. So, definitely his best season up to date. I think if he can continue to be a good top six forward for the Flyers, he could definitely be a solid player for the Philadelphia. I think if he can continue to produce off this, reach the 20 goal mark this year, maybe reach 50 points, maybe do a little bit better than that, I think he'd definitely be a really good player. But he's a good young forward. He's going to be an RFA at the end of the deal. He's a fantastic young player. I think this is a fantastic deal for the Flyers. So they're now done with their RFA business, and Frost is now under contract and should be able to be in the opening night roster as like a middle six center. So good to see that, and I expect Frost to continue to develop and continue to grow his game over the next couple of years during this contract as the Flyers continue their rebuild. So a really good signing there. I think Frost should continue to be a fantastic addition for the Philadelphia Flyers. But good to see the Flyers got all their RFA business done and that he's now signed. And then the big news from over the past couple of days, and that is that the Ottawa Senators have signed Jake Sanderson, who was coming off his first season in the NHL, to a 8-year contract extension that will have an AAV of $8.05 million in a deal will begin at the start of next year. Now, Sanderson just completed his rookie season. He was one of the top 5 in the Calder Cup voting. He was a really good defender last year. Had 4 goals, 32 points, 77 games, was a consistent top 4 defenseman, was a fantastic defender for the Ottawa Senators. Now, there's definitely risk involved with this, given the fact he's only played 77 NHL games. Giving a player who's only played 77 NHL games an $8 million contract extension that'll kick in at the start of next year does not come without risks. But I definitely do expect Sanderson to grow into this contract, like Stützle. Stützle didn't have very many games played before he signed his contract either, but look at where that contract is now. I think he's signed for just over $8 million, and Stützle just put up 90 points. If he continues, he's going to be probably a over 100-point player. So, in my opinion, this is a fantastic deal. I think there is risk involved because Sanderson could have injury troubles, not wind up rounding out to be a good player. But if Sanderson continues to do as well as he did last year and continues to grow, he's going to fit into this contract very, very well. So in my eyes, I do think it might be to some a little bit more of an overpayment for now, but I think in a couple of years' time, after he continues to grow more into that solid top paired defenseman, this is going to be a fantastic contract for the Senators. So in my eyes, I know it's a little bit risky, but I think getting this contract done now before he starts getting even more points, it was a smart deal for the Senators, and I think this is a really good deal for Ottawa. So good to see that they locked up Sanderson long term, and now they got most of their core locked up. You've got Tkachuk, Batherson, Stützle, Norris, Sanderson, Shabbat. You have a ton of now your young core locked up for the next foreseeable future. So really good for Ottawa, and I think Sanderson should definitely improve and grow into this contract eventually. So those are the three signings that we have. Really good to see Philly lock up for us to get rid of the RFA business. Good to see the Anaheim Ducks sign Lunio, who I think in time should definitely be a solid top four defenseman. And good to see Ottawa get a contract extension done with Sanderson. They'll kick in next year, as definitely avoids a long strenuous contract negotiation next year. So definitely some really good contracts there from the Sens, Flyers, and Ducks. And I think all three of those players should continue to do well for their organizations. Next, going over to the PTO update part of the video. A couple of PTOs to talk about here today. First, we're going to go to the Arizona Coyotes. We have 8 more PTOs to talk about here today. We're going to start with Arizona. They have signed 2 more players to PTOs. That's forward Ryan Dzingel and defenseman Peter DeLiberator. DeLiberator was a member of the Knights and the Penguins last year. He was part of the Teddy Bluger trade that got Vegas Teddy Bluger. A decent depth defenseman, mostly an NHL defenseman, so I'm not going to say he's going to make the NHL roster with any certainty or get a 2-way contract, but he could, and I think it could be a good depth addition for the Coyotes, maybe a call-up option eventually. So not exactly sure if he'll get a contract, but definitely good to see him go to training camp on a PTO. Dzingel took a time away from the game last year, if I'm correct. He's been a really good bomb 6 forward over the past couple of years, playing with teams like Ottawa, Columbus, San Jose, Arizona. So definitely, I think he could fit in well as like a bomb 6 forward for the Coyotes. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Dzingel wound up getting a 2-way deal, but we'll have to wait and see. As I think Arizona has a pretty good forward group right now, and the Dzingel may not make the NHL roster. But definitely, I think really good there. Coyotes bringing in DeLiberator and Dzingel on the PTO to try and see if they can get a 2-way contract. The Boston Bruins, some of the top free agents left, and Danton Heinen to a PTO. That was a really good deal for my opinion. Heinen, I think, is definitely going to get a 2-way deal from someone. Heinen has previous experience playing in Boston. He played in Pittsburgh over the past couple of years, so definitely good to see that he's going there. I would not be too shocked if he got like a 2-way deal from the Boston Bruins. And if the Bruins didn't give him a contract, I would expect someone else to definitely give him a 2-way deal. So it's going to be interesting to see. But Boston gets Heinen on a PTO. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. And I think Heinen should definitely thrive on that PTO and then walk into a 2-way contract. The Columbus Blue Jackets have signed former Jacket Stefan Matu. Matu was a pretty good depth forward a couple of years back. He's been basically an AHL forward over the past couple of years. So he's going to camp on a PTO. I think Mateo could definitely be a solid bomb 6 forward, maybe spare forward, most likely an AHL forward. So it wouldn't surprise me if he got a 2-way deal and was sent to the minors. But I really do think it's probably hard for him to break the Jackets roster, but you never know. So he's going to go camp on PTO with the Jackets, and we'll see if he can earn himself a contract. The Colorado Avalanche are bringing in Saku Manalainen on a PTO. That's a really good PTO in my opinion. Manalainen is a fantastic bomb 6 forward. He showed that last year with the Winnipeg Jets. He's going to get a chance here to earn himself a 2-way contract. Colorado's not the deepest team in the league, so if he does well, maybe he gets a 2-way deal with the Colorado Avalanche. I could see that happening. He's also a decent bomb 6 forward who can play on the 4th line. So I definitely do expect Manalainen to get some opportunity. If not with the Avalanche, then I think another team will probably most likely sign him as a bomb 6 forward. So definitely do expect Manalainen to get at least a good look there in Colorado. The Dallas Stars have signed Brendan Halverson, who's a goaltending player, to a PTO. That's a decent PTO, not someone who I think is going to get a 2-way NHL contract. But Halverson's been a depth player his entire career, so I definitely do expect Halverson most likely to not get an NHL 2-way contract. But the Stars don't have a fantastic amount of depth in the goaltending market, so maybe they sign him to a two-way deal and send him to the minors. I think that's possible, but definitely they're going to be bringing in Halverson on PTO. The LA Kings are signing John Francis Berube, who is another goaltending player on the PTO. Berube's been mostly an AHL goaltender his entire career, but the Kings do have some goaltending problems. They do have Talbot, Copley, Riddick, but they could bring in another guy on a two-way deal just for added insurance. So I wouldn't be surprised if Berube were to be able to get it like a two-way contract, but I think for the time being he'll just go to camp on PTO, and we'll see where this goes for the Kings. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs have signed Noah Gregor to a PTO. So that's a really good one in my opinion. Gregor, like Heinen, in my opinion, was one of the top-end free agents left in the free agent market. So getting Gregor is a really good guy. Bomb 6 forward, had a pretty good season last year in San Jose. I think he could thrive in the Bomb 6 role, just like Heinen. If he's not going to get a two-way contract in Toronto, then I could definitely see another team sign to a two-way contract. He's probably one of the better guys on the PTO, so definitely another name to watch out for. I think there's a big chance that he signs on a two-way contract somewhere. So definitely pretty interesting PTO names here, with De Liberator and Dzingel going to Arizona on a PTO, Boston getting Heinen on a PTO, Mateo going to Columbus on a PTO, Colorado getting Manalainen on a PTO, Halverson going to Dallas on a PTO, Berube going to LA on a PTO, and Gregor going to Toronto on a PTO. Probably still some more PTOs to be signed over the next couple of weeks leading up to training camp, but at this point in time, those are the PTO updates we haven't gotten around to yet. And I would say Manalainen, Heinen, and Gregor will probably be the most likely to sign to NHL contracts. Maybe Dzingel. The other guys I think will be probably less likely, but definitely I think guys like Gregor, Heinen, Manalainen, maybe to some extent Dzingel will probably have a solid shot at getting a two-way NHL contract. So going to be interesting to see, but those are the PTO updates that we got to talk about here today. A couple of quick news before we get to some trade rumors. The Arizona Coyotes have extended GM Bill Armstrong. Armstrong's done a fantastic job, in my opinion, of rebuilding this Arizona Coyotes team. He helped with the teardown. He broke this Arizona team, dismantled it as much as he could. This past year, he started to rebuild the team. He's done a fantastic job, in my opinion, building up the Arizona Coyotes again. I think he's done a fantastic job giving the Arizona Coyotes some life. I think they did a lot better than anyone expected last year, and as I talked about in my season preview series earlier, I think the Arizona Coyotes are going to surprise a lot of teams this year. So I think he's done a really good job. I think he definitely deserves a contract extension. He's been able to keep that team intact, even with all of the clouded rumors about if this Arizona team is going to be able to stay in Arizona in the long term. So definitely, I think Bill Armstrong definitely deserved that. He was already signed for this year, so I think it was like a 2 or 3 year extension. I'm not exactly sure on the term, but definitely Armstrong is a fantastic GM. He's helped the Arizona Coyotes rebuilding this team, and I think he's a fantastic GM, and he's going to be a fantastic GM moving forward to help rebuild this Arizona Coyotes team into an NHL Cup contender. So definitely going to be interesting to see, but Arizona has a bright young future. And most of that is because of Bill Armstrong's play to break this team down and rebuild it, and now starting from the ground up, he's rebuilding it. So definitely, I like the extension from Bill Armstrong, and hopefully he can continue to help the Coyotes become more lethal and better suited to become a playoff team. Another piece of news that was discussed on Elliot Friedman's most recent 32 Thoughts podcast was that the Vancouver Canucks could name a captain this year before the season starts, and there's a lot of talk that could happen. And he says his money is on Quinn Hughes. He says that he thinks that Quinn Hughes is maybe the front runner here to become the next captain. So ever since Bo Horvat was traded away to the New York Islanders last year, there have been a lot of discussions I've seen online who will be the next Canucks captain. I've seen some people say JT Miller. I've seen a lot of people say Elias Pettersson. I've also seen a lot of people say Quinn Hughes. There are probably a couple of other guys as well. But yeah, I think Quinn Hughes is a really good option if they do end up going with him to be the next captain of the Canucks. Hughes is a fantastic defender. He's a really good player. He really means a lot to the Vancouver Canucks. He's definitely a leader in that locker room. So definitely, in my opinion, Hughes would be a fantastic name to be named the next captain of the Canucks. So definitely love to hear your thoughts on that. If the Canucks were to name Hughes captain, do you think that would be a good naming? Do you think someone else like a Pettersson or a Miller should get it? Definitely love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. But definitely I think Hughes makes a ton of sense in my opinion, and Hughes would be a fantastic option in my opinion to become the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. So definitely something to keep your eye out here. probably over the next couple of weeks, if the Canucks try and name a captain before the season starts, maybe look out for Quinn Hughes to become that next captain for the Vancouver Canucks. Going over to another piece of news here, also talked on the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman. He talked about the fact that there was a Sabres podcast talking about Rasmus Dahlin. He said that Rasmus Dahlin, there was some talk on a recent Buffalo podcast talking about the Sabres that Dahlin and the Buffalo Sabres were rumored to be closing in on a possible extension that has Dahlin in around an 8-year deal with a AAV of $10.5 million. And Freeman talked with one of his sources, and he said that that's around what they were doing. He said there's still details to iron out, so nothing is set in stone yet. But he says it sounds like it's probably going to be an 8-year deal around $10.5 million. And it sounds like it could be announced sometime in the near future, not waiting too long. It sounds like it could be a deal that happens in the not too distant future. So that could be a really good boost for the Buffalo Sabres. We know they've been able to sign a lot of players to team-friendly deals. Samuelson's only signed for $7 million for the next couple of seasons. Thompson's only signed for $7 million for the next couple of seasons. Same thing with Dylan Cousins. So a lot of their young talent is signed long-term on really, really team-friendly deals. But Dahlin is a really good player. He got Norris votes last year. He was a really fantastic, entertaining defenseman. He had a career season last year. Dahlin's going to be worth this money if he is able to sign it. Now, it is a little bit much in my opinion. Definitely, I think that would make him one of the highest paid defensemen in the NHL. Even guys like Adam Fox and Cale Makar signed for under $10 million. So if that is what they wind up signing him for, it is a little bit risky given the fact that he'd be one of the most expensive defensemen in the NHL. But one, the cap was going up, so even if they were to sign a $10.5 million, it's not that big of a deal. And two, they signed so many players like Samuelson, Thompson, and Cousins to so team-friendly deals. I think having one overpriced defenseman in Rasmus Dahlin wouldn't be overly bad, and I don't think Dahlin at $10.5 million would be extremely overly priced. So in my eyes, that'll be a fantastic deal. 8 times $10.5 million. It sounds like there's still some things to work out, but it sounds like it could be announced before the season starts. So definitely something we'll have to keep our eye on. As it sounds like Buffalo and Dahlin could be almost done on a rumored extension that could keep Dahlin in Buffalo for the next 9 seasons. And lastly, we're going over here to talk about some trade rumors. Also talked about on the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman. He was talking about with training camp coming up, the NHL held a meeting before the season's meeting this year. It just happened yesterday, so there was a lot of talk that could also spark some things as well. He says that he was feeling that even though everyone took some rest and relaxation after August, after that Carlson trade, it sounds like there's a lot of talk picking up right now, and we could see some moves over the next couple of weeks. I think that's possible. Usually before training camp, during training camp, you see a couple of trades happen, so definitely going to be interesting to see. But he listed a couple of teams who have been seemingly in the trade talks right now. He mentioned Ottawa as one of them. Shane Pinto still remains unsigned. They only have $900,000. He says that the Sens are most likely not going to sign him for $900,000, so he expects them to make some sort of a move. He said this also on an NHL Network appearance he made, saying that Pinto probably going to get around $2.5 million in a new deal, and that the Sens are trying to work out cap, try and move someone out to try and gain enough cap space to sign Pinto. I think that's definitely a likely possibility for the Ottawa Senators. Like we talked about over the past couple of weeks, past month, Joseph makes a ton of sense with the Ottawa Senators. So does Brandstrom. The Sens have a really deep defense, so moving Brandstrom, putting Bernard Docker into the third pair role, it wouldn't be that bad of a deal. Brandstrom makes $2 million, so it doesn't make that bad of a deal. Joseph probably would be a fourth liner at this point in time. $2.9 million as a fourth line forward would not be overly fantastic. Joseph's another likely guy to move, in my opinion, so definitely look out for Joseph and Brandstrom to possibly on the move in the next couple of weeks before the season starts. I also heard a couple of rumors, not from Friedman, but from other places, saying that the Bruins have some interest in trying to bring in Shane Pinto. I don't think that's likely to happen. I know the Bruins could definitely use a top 6 center. Pinto could definitely help with that. But in my opinion, Pinto is most likely going to sign with the Sens, and the only way the Sens even consider moving Pinto would be if they were able to get back a pretty good package, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that right now. So, besides, the Boston Bruins also don't have enough cap space to sign Pinto to a new deal. So, I would definitely be shocked if Pinto was moved, especially to a division rival like Boston. But it does sound like the Bruins had some interest in Pinto, and they were trying to see what they could do to acquire him. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think Pinto does resign with Ottawa. I think it's just a matter of the Sens moving Joseph or Brandstrom before the start of the season to clear up enough cap space. Going over to the Canucks, Friedman also said that the Canucks have an abundance of wingers and could definitely benefit from moving one of them. They also are over the cap, especially if Pearson, who seems to be healthy right now, winds up making the roster, or at least being healthy enough to be on the roster and non long-term injury reserve. So it sounds like with Pearson most likely being in the lineup, they're going to have to make some sort of a move. So it sounds like there's definitely a likely chance there's a winger moved. It would have to be a winger with substantial cap hit and enough to free up cap space. So even though Höglander was mentioned a couple of months ago and it has been mentioned in trade rumors, I don't expect him to be moved. I would be looking at guys like Beauvillier, Garland, or Besser. Besser most likely probably doesn't, given his cap hit and the fact that he really wants to stay in Vancouver. Beauvillier did really well in his time with Vancouver after being acquired from the Islanders last year, but he is entering the final year of his deal, so that could make him a little bit more easier to move. Garland has 3 years left. He's a decent middle six forward. He's making just under $5 million in cap space, so it could definitely be another option the Canucks look to try and move a player off the roster. So that's another possibility. So definitely it sounds like the Canucks will most likely move a winger, maybe Myers. I still think Myers is a possible option to be traded before the season starts. So definitely Canucks, look for them to move a winger, maybe Myers before the season starts to free up cap space, as it looks like Tanner Pearson is healthy enough right now, and he will most likely be able to at least be healthy by the start of the season, whether it be in the NHL or AHL roster. So definitely going to be interesting to see. But with Pearson being healthy, look for guys like Garland, Besser, Beauvillier, or maybe even Tyler Myers to be moved before the season starts. And lastly here, going over to the Winnipeg Jets. He was talking about the Winnipeg Jets and the Calgary Flames, about how they didn't really do much. We thought the Jets and Flames would be blowing it up, making big move after big move this offseason. They didn't really do much. The Jets bought out Blake Wheeler. They made a Dubois deal. Besides that, they really didn't do much. The Flames moved Tyler Toffoli, brought in Igor Sharangovich. They didn't do anything after that. So really the Flames and Jets were quite quiet, and they're going into the season at this point in time with big UFAs on their roster right now. There's still some talk Lindholm could sign before the season starts, but besides that, you still got like Hanifin, Backlund, Tanev, Zadorov, Shillington in Calgary. Winnipeg still has Hellebuyck and Scheifele, so definitely some big free agents that are on those two teams that could walk for nothing if they don't trade them or re-sign them. But Elliot Friedman was talking about Hellebuyck in particular and said that Hellebuyck hasn't closed the door on remaining with the Winnipeg Jets. He said the Jets are most likely going to try and sit down with Hellebuyck once he gets back for training camp in the next couple of days and see if they can convince him to possibly remain with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, we know earlier in the season there was a lot of talk that the Jets were going to have to move Hellebuyck because Hellebuyck said that he was not going to sign an extension, but it sounds like, according to Elliot Friedman, he's open to an extension, and he's willing to remain with the Winnipeg Jets, depending on what happens. Now, he probably still wants somewhere close to Vasilevsky money at $9.5 million. I'm not sure if on an 8-year deal he'll be able to get that. Maybe on a shorter-term deal, like a 3 or 4 year deal, he'll be able to get $9.5 million, but at 8 years, I don't think that's going to happen. But you know that a lot of teams were wary of bringing him in because of the contract he was demanding. Maybe with Winnipeg, he accepts a lower price. Maybe with Winnipeg, he could definitely be a better fit. I didn't know that there was a lot of teams out there who could use a starting goaltender like Hellebuyck, but the Jets could also use a starting goaltender like Hellebuyck. So maybe they're able to work something out. I'm not sure if there would be a contract extension before the season starts or maybe in season, but it sounds like Hellebuyck is open to possibly remaining with the Winnipeg Jets. So that's going to be something we have to keep our eye on, as it sounds like it is not a guarantee at this point in time that Hellebuyck does leave Winnipeg and go somewhere else. It seems like it is possible that Winnipeg possibly trying to keep Hellebuyck, and Hellebuyck is open to possibly remaining. So that's going to be an interesting situation, as it sounds like Hellebuyck, even though through all these trade rumors, maybe he's had some time to relax, and maybe he's open to staying with the Winnipeg Jets. So it's going to be an interesting situation to see. Also on the 30 Thoughts podcast, he said that Mark Scheifele, he hasn't heard much about him, but he says that the Jets feel that a couple of years ago, Scheifele, Dubois was going to be their top two centers going forward. Now they don't have Dubois. If they don't have Scheifele as well, that's a really big blow for them. So if they were to move Scheifele, they said they needed a replacement right away. So it'll be really interesting to see. But they also have Velarde, who I think could be a good second line center. So if they were to trade Scheifele, it sounds like it has to be a pretty big package for probably an NHL level center, a younger center. But definitely, it sounds like Scheifele will most likely possibly be traded, possibly stay. We're still not sure about that. But if the Jets were to trade him, they would need to trade him for a substantial center. So that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Definitely love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think about Dahlin possibly being extended by 8 times 10.5? Is that a good deal? Is that a bad deal? Love to hear your thoughts. Would Hughes make a good captain in Vancouver? Definitely love to hear your thoughts. Did you like the Bill Armstrong extension for the Arizona Coyotes? I did. Love to hear your thoughts. Do the Sens move a contract before the season starts? Will it be Brandstrom? Will it be Joseph? Is there any possible way the Bruins can pry Pinto from Ottawa? Definitely love to hear your thoughts. Do the Canucks move a player? I think they have to. Is it Garland? Is it Besser? Is it Bouvillier? Is it Myers? Definitely love to hear your thoughts. And do the Jets keep Hellebuyck, sign into a new extension, either before the season starts or during the season? Or do they still wind up having to trade him? And do the Jets wind up keeping Scheifele, or do they move him? And if they move him, what sort of a player do you think they could get back in a Scheifele return? Definitely love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. I'll also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so definitely check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.